Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. You dirty rats! I was asked to say that, so I'm trying to make my chess viewers smile a little bit. Apparently a lot of you like it when I say that, so we are all dirty rats. Okay, it's time to get serious. And you know what that means. That means that we are not going to get serious, except about chess. But we're having fun with it, right? Without fun, chess ain't worth spit, yeah? Okay, Artur Yusupov, his chess course. Really, truly. Build up your chess number 2 beyond the basics. For those of you who have this magnificent chess course, I've been looking in this a little bit this evening, and in chapter 23 he talks about improving the position of your pieces. Let me read just a little bit. He says improving the position of your pieces is one of the most important positional operations. So we're talking about positional chess, right? You already know that you must, if possible, get, and he puts this in bold, we must get all your pieces into play. And he is screaming that. Yeah. Okay, we know that. Yeah. Well, you must try to place your pieces in their optimal and their most active positions, and as you do, it is very important to ensure that all of your pieces are developed with the idea of being coordinated with each other. So we need to learn not only bring all our pieces into our game, but coordinate them so that bishops can work with rooks, knights with queens, queens with rooks and bishops, knights with pawns and kings and rooks and bishops. You know the score, right? Yes. The pieces must form a whole which can act in common and can mutually support each other. In other words, since I am one of the great blunder kings on online chess, and I need to iron this defect in my chess out, I'm going to grab myself by the neck and throttle myself until I get this. One, I do want to play with all my pieces. The second thing I need to learn how to do is quit hanging my pieces. That means each piece has support as a part in the whole. This is what Yusupov is talking about. And then, as usual, I have blundered in my video. I set up the board wrong. I'm supposed to be in this position because he shows an example. So hang on. Gad-free. Not only do I blunder in chess, I blunder in making videos. Hang on, I'll be right back. Don't go away. You're going to miss something really good this time. Okay, I'm back. See, if I would have paid attention to details, I wouldn't have hung my entire chessboard. Not only do I hang pieces in games, I hang the entire chessboard. I bet I am the only chess player in the world to have done such a blunder. Okay, now on with the good stuff, though. In this position, what Yusupov wants to get us in the mood for, in the idea here, this is by E. Nager and S. Yusupov, St. Petersburg's 2000. So, 19 years ago already. I remember like this game was yesterday. Yeah, right. I've never even seen this or heard of these guys until reading this chapter. So, anyway, yes. White. And I still set it up wrong. Holy shishka stinking Bob! Do it right, dude! Okay, black has the queen there. Holy crap! Am I missing anything else? For the love of Sam Walton. I am! Holy cow, this is embarrassing! Oh, well, I'll have to get over it. Yes, and there was a pawn there. Okay, is that position right? Am I going to be able to show this in the video? Come on, people. We have people waiting to watch us. Let's get with this. White makes a series of moves in this position where he improves each one of his pieces. Very important to know. Yeah? Here are the moves. Now we can see they're all fully developed, of course. We're in the middle game, there's no question. Potentially getting toward the end game. Black seems to have the queenside pretty good, doesn't he? White doesn't necessarily have a kingside attack. It seems to me like black's queenside is stronger, more dominating at this point, but white is not without resources. Here's the first move. Very cool to look at this. He's on a partial open file. He is using the partial open file to do what? Target. Nice, huh? The two of our three pillars, right? Here we go. What this does, Yusupov says, and I want to read this, that way I get the full meaning from Yusupov. White improves the position of the rook. You can see, I hope, that's not a bad position. This is truly better. I hope you can see that. That is what this particular diagram is going to demonstrate to us. How to improve our position, our pieces. So this is a rook improvement hitting that target. Yeah, that's the idea. He gains a tempo at the same time and forces the black bishop to leave the important long diagonal. He also has a really good secondary diagonal. But this move improves his rook and it will deteriorate black's bishop. Let's watch. Bishop b4. Okay, so black was able to keep the short, but he lost the long diagonal. After this move, of course, you're not going to take the bishop and lose the exchange. That's not what this is about. We are going to improve white's position and his pieces. And he says, by the way, at this point he says, bishop to g7, had he done that, loses to rook a3. Look at that little tactic available. Move the queen, lose the knight. Because the knight is hit twice now. Yeah? You're not going to go here. You're going to lose the queen, right? So you got to move out of the way somehow, and you're going to lose that knight. So that's a sweet little tactic to keep in mind. If there's a piece undefended, behind a piece undefended, get a rook or something in there on that same mile. So that would have been a fatal error. Well, not fatal, but a very nasty error. So he does get him off the long diagonal. Okay? Okay, that's important to see. The next piece that white improves, and I really hope you can see this is an improvement of his piece, which improves his position, is knight e5. That's obviously an improvement, yeah? Okay, so we have two white pieces now that have improved their position. He got this bishop off that long diagonal, which gives him the chance to strengthen his knight even more. That's two. Okay, let's see what keeps happening. He activates the knight, and the knight is going to find a real good position on c6, isn't it? Look at that outpost on the very best rank he can on the 6th. dominates the queen side if he gets to that. Yeah? So that makes sense why from f3 you want to go to e5, because you've got the post here. We need to train our eyes, we meaning me, Carrie, the backyard professor, to see future knight homes that are very powerful. Right? This is a great lesson for that. Okay, there's two pieces greatly improved. Rook A, C8. Now, black's not trying to be a pushover by any means. The rook wasn't very active on the A file, much better on the C file, yes? Supporting that pawn, for one thing. Getting activated, we'll see if that works. Rook H3. So, we had a rook lift that got rid of the bishop off that long diagonal to improve his knight. Now from that rook lift, he goes directly over toward the king side, the weakness. The dark squares are weak around the king because the g-pawn pushed. You've got a knight here that can hit those pawns and begin cracking open the king side, and you've moved your rook over. The rook here is truly in every way better than it was there, isn't it? It's just fun to see. I love doing that when I study these diagrams out of Yusupov. He has things like this all the time in his course. Here to here, yeah. What a difference in the position, yes? This is great. C4, black has properly put his rook behind the passed pawn. That is where rooks belong. Behind your pawn. Once you get to that point, you're pretty much dominating with the queen and the bishop. You're pretty much dominating the queen side. You have the rook behind your pawn. Push that pawn as fast and far as you can get it. That makes perfect sense. Nice to see how it makes sense, isn't it? So black is not just playing slough-off chess. Not at all. However, Queen E3. Once again, and this is not an overly majestic, magnificent, stunning, slash, flash, whoa, brilliant move. It's just one more square up. And it is at this point that Yusupov says, in just 4 moves, white has won the game. Black can't hardly beat off the mating threat threatened with Queen H6. You can see that. Right there. There's your target square. Wow. Just one little bump up and there's the win. Because you lifted the rook, improving its position, put it out there and put the knight up here on e5. Note how skillfully white coordinated his pieces. The rook, the knight, the queen, and yes, the c1 bishop, because it backs up the queen to the diagonal, or to the h6 on the diagonal. That is a fabulous coordination. This is what Yusupov is emphasizing, and this gives him a direct attack on the king side. He will get to the king before black can get that pawn promoted. Now, black was attempting to coordinate as best he could to get the pawn in, yes, But his plan is slower than White's, who literally won the game in just 4 moves. The ability to find an optimal position for his pieces is the main weapon of the positional player. So this is a brief, quick mini lesson. Now, Yusupov picks up, he's got, oh my heavens, he's got a whole lot more, including puzzles and their detailed solutions in the rest of this chapter. I wanted to show you this out of this text of Yusupov. He continues this theme, improving the position of your pieces, in another one of his parts of his courses that I want to get to here in just a sec. I'll be right back. Okay, later in his course, Yusupov picked up this theme again. And I did it again. I left the board the same way when I wasn't supposed to. What a blunder. Yeah, what a blunderer. He picks up this idea again. This is in his book, Chess Evolution Beyond the Basics, Volume 2. Developing this theme further, and what he says is, and I want to read this section to you, and then I'll show you a chess game with this theme that is truly outstanding. In addition to the important tasks of coordinating our pieces, we saw how he coordinated the queen with the bishop, with the rook, stay still dude, and with the knight. Yeah, that was a great coordination of pieces. Black was also trying to coordinate his pieces with the bishop, the queen, the knight, and the rook. The rook got behind the pawn, the bishop covers, and the queen covers more or less, even though you have the bishop here that's supported by the queen and the rook, stopping the pawn, but he was trying to get that pawn in. So both players are doing well. White's plan was just faster. He's got serious checkmate threats right now. Yeah. So the idea of coordinating our pieces now, finding ideal positions for them, we must also try to disrupt our opponent's coordination. And he gives a clue here that I've kind of known about, but the way he shows this really brought it home to me. This is cool. Really cool. And he illustrates this in a chess game I want to show you. One simple but very useful idea on how to coordinate our pieces while disrupting our opponent's coordination is to post a rook on the same file of the opposing queen. This can result in numerous tactical possibilities. Frequently, the opposing queen will look for a safer position and as a result, find itself on a less active square. That's why we want to put our rook on a file across from a queen. His game here that he demonstrates this with is by Paula-Gofski and Sadie. This was done played in Tallinn in 1973. Yeah, that's the game. I've taken notes. I will hang on and I will set up the board and then I'll show you this game. Phenomenal game. This is fun stuff, man. Real fun stuff. I hope I don't regret taking this just out of the book. I haven't taken the time to write it down. I've had a very busy day and I've been preparing this video for you and I've wanted to write it all out on paper, but I didn't. So anyway, I'll wing it and we'll see if I can do this correctly without flubbing up too bad, because this is great stuff. This is exquisite chess. Right here. Knight f3. Come on, kiddo, show up. d5, he's going to hit the center. A common theme. d4, he's going to meet in the center, a common theme, and then bishop e7, of course, because he wants to castle. That makes sense. Bishop g5. Now, there's the knight pin with the bishop, but the pin is not a pin to the queen, but it is a development, and we'll see why this works. castles, and e3, support the center. h6, make the bishop decide what he wants to do, rather than come, well, he bumped the e3, so he can't technically go this direction, so, I mean, it makes sense that he puts the bishop on h4, yeah, that makes sense. Just work with me on this, I promise, that makes sense. b6, he's going to fianchetto his bishop here, and bishop to d3. Now, he said in later games, Paula-Gofski would switch to putting the queen to b3. Instead of the bishop, he used the queen. But that's not going to affect the game or the idea that Yusupov is trying to give us here that is really good. Now, he fianchettoed his center. There's a little bit of tension in the center. The center is hit. This square and this square with the knight. Yes, it's not a pin technically, but Paula-Gofski went ahead and took the knight. Okay, now we get into the thick of this. And of course, very precious few, if any, grandmasters is ever going to retake with the g-pawn. No. No, he takes it with the bishop, right? It makes sense why. Don't disrupt the kingside pawns unnecessarily. In the continuation of preparing to place his pieces on maximally good positional squares, Paula-Gofski takes this pawn. His opponent, Sadie, takes the pawn back. And now he castles. So we've got a castle here and knight d7. Now, again, just to reiterate, the knight here is hitting this square and this square. And this square and this square. Had he come to here, it would be different squares that he was hitting. One different square. That one he hits here anyway. Yeah? So rather than hitting this square, he's hitting this square by bringing the knight to the d7. Okay? All right, now, here Yusupov says it is a developing move, so it's, you can't fault it as such. However, c5 here, hitting the center directly is probably the stronger way to go. That's kind of something cool for us to recognize. Whether it's this chess opening or not, if we understand, if we realize that he's got the pawn chain, if white has the pawn chain and all, if you've got the bump of the b6, the c5 pawn push hitting the center is a good strong move. That's what I wanted to emphasize to you. Yusupov mentioned this, so I thought I'd pass that on. Rather, this time he went to the knight develop, okay? So just so you're aware of that. It was important enough for Yusupov to make a note, so I make a comment. And now Paula-Gofski puts the, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, I apologize, I mean no disrespect, queen to b3 here. And c6. So, here's the issue. The development has been pretty swift with both grandmasters, right? And we're used to seeing this. The catch is we want to imitate them as much as possible in our chess games. So let's keep this example in mind. And he does bring his rook into the center. That is his next move. Look, he pushed his bishops, he pushed his knights, he's got central pawns, he's got his queen out. Doesn't it just kind of jive and make sense that, okay, now the rooks? Truly, it's just worth watching. It's worth knowing. So, here's Yusupov's comment on this, that we want to make sure we understand in this setup White has positioned his pieces very actively, and he prevents the strategically important breakthrough which c5 represents. Now that black has chosen to develop rather than directly attack the center at this point, now white's setup is preventing black from pushing that c5. His pieces have become strategically situated that the c5 is going to be problematic for black, not helpful. Okay, and let's see how he keeps doing this. I'm just sharing the note with Yusupov. For instance, the placement of the rook on the d in the center file is directly opposite that black queen. That is always a good placement for your rook, across from your opponent's queen. Tarish, I believe it was, Siegfried Tarish, said any time the rook is ever placed directly across from the queen or from the king, I don't care how many pawns and pieces are in between them, it's always dangerous for the player with the queen. Okay? So, it makes sense why he put it on D and not C at this point. He did it on D. So let's see how this works out. Rook, is that an E? Yeah. Rook E8. He's grabbing the partial open file, the central open file, the other one. See, they're both playing real good chess at this point, yeah? Here is the fascinating thing about this. This is one reason I wanted to show you this game. In a game like this at this point, if it was between a gent named Shakespeare and I, that I play online quite a bit, or Open File I've played online and we talk a lot in our games, or Dark Side of War, or even Junie, I've talked a little bit with Junie. At this point, we start exploring options. We say, okay, we're through the developmental stage. We are clearly in the middle game. What would happen if we went ahead and put the knight on the outpost? And then what we do is we work through a couple of different variations trying to see what happens here. Then we'll take the moves back to the critical position and say, okay, yeah, that kind of gave black an edge. What would happen if we went ahead and put the other rook over here and pushed the E pawn? Right? Yep, black makes a move, whatever. And we work this out. Yeah, well, put it there for now. What would happen if we pushed the pawn? How is that going to change? Because they're fighting for the file. You see what I mean? And then after we tinker with that experiment, then we go back to the critical position. So what did white do? This is one of those situations where in analyzing in a study game on casual mode, online playing chess, would really be fun to examine because of white did do. He bopped his bishop to B1. Now, here Yusupov is ranting and raving and talking and showing many numerous examples of either partial games or full games where the theme is putting your pieces on the optimal squares, and that's a great move. No, it's not in the center. No, it doesn't command as many squares as it could, but watch the strategic and tactical theme of that bishop drop. This is what impressed me about this game. One of the things that impressed me. Here we are getting into something really interesting. This is, as Yusupov says, a clever regrouping. So it's not going to permanently stay there, but he shifts his pieces around to get them on their optimal squares. It's a regrouping. That's why that odd bishop move makes sense. And let me keep going here. what he is doing, one, it further prevents c5, but what he's doing here is he is preparing a possible battery on this diagonal. What does he mean by a battery? By bringing your bishop all the way back, blam, you now have just one move for the queen, and you have a battery, the queen-bishop battery, and you've got a very interesting kingside option, right? You you start getting the knight up here on e5 safely, and you're in the attack, right? So the theme of dropping back the bishop to regroup to get an optimal square for your pieces makes sense, even though it decentralizes the bishop. And I've ranted and raved for many videos about the importance of controlling the center, but look, the bishop did not lose any tempi in moving. Bishops don't do that, because he lost this diagonal, but that's not the critical one. The critical one is the one going to the king, and he did not lose any influence. This bishop is as strong here as he is here, as he is here, as he is here on that diagonal. I'm just using this to illustrate. Of course, the king would take the bishop. That wasn't my point. Anywhere along that diagonal, he keeps his influence, right? So dropping him down as a regroup. I know I'm ranting and raving, but this is really cool. And now queen went to b8, and black recognizes the importance of getting the bishop off of the same file as the opposing rook. And you say, yeah, there's no danger right now. There's two pawns, and they're locked, and a knight and all that. Doesn't matter. It helps uncoordinate your opponent's pieces by putting that rook against the queen. You can see real clearly, please tell me you can, that the queen really is better here than here anyway. Now, granted, got a great diagonal down there. I understand that, but this is still even a better place for the queen. You can see that. So it's already kind of goofing. For instance, he can't connect his rooks, black. His A rook is out of play, locked in, right? So that's one point of doing this. Now, tactically, strategically, positionally, white can improve and get the edge up. The next rook on the central file. So they're not open files, no. In fact, look at this. Interestingly enough, it's a pretty good pawn chain, and these two front pawns are locked, and yet white is choosing the D and E files, which are probably the most trafficked files for rooks on open files that there is in chess. Even though it's not even a partial open file, to black it is. Not this one, but black has a partial open file. His own pawn is not stopping his own rook. So he's got a target. For white, that is not an open file, but he puts the rooks there anyway. Full development, full preparation, a regrouping. Let's keep watching. What white is going to do is push the E pawn from E3 to E4, and that will open up the center. You can see that. This is a beautiful illustration, once again. Which is more important? Now, you know, we argue about controlling the center. Yusupov is huge on that. Nimzovich, Alekin, all of them. Capablanca. Oh boy, Capablanca was huge on this. What's more important? The pawn chain, which truly does keep out invaders through the center. I mean, that's a great structure. But what is more vital? The pawn chain or the rooks being able to go up and down and into black's territory. The rooks. So he will be willing to exchange a pawn, or even sacrifice a pawn, to open up the file. Do you see how that works? If and when white pushes, and black would take that pawn, that opens up the file for white. He's got the partial, but then the black pawn becomes the target. Right now, black has the target with the white pawn, but if he exchanges pawn for pawn, then it's white's turn to have the target on the file. You see how that works? Man, I'm ranting and raving like a bat out of heck. Sorry, but this is really important. Knight F to E, yes. And now bishop bumps back to E7 here. Black wants to regroup his pieces too, because he can see that his queen side is just not quite right, so you got to hurry up and regroup. He can see white regrouping. It's obvious white is regrouping some stuff. He's pulling out his rook. So it's black's turn to try to do the same thing real quick, right? So here we go. He wants to. One reason why this makes sense, the dark squared bishop is a great defender of the castled king. With the pawn structure this way, though, not as much. The better defender is a knight on f6, and that is what black is trying to do in his regroup. He's going to drop the bishop back, and he wants to put the knight on f6. That's a stronger defense for the king against a kingside attack, because it guards the h7, well, and the g8. So that is what black is attempting to do here. And he does have to somehow find a way to straighten out this queenside. It's not working. That queenside is not a healthy queenside right now. But that was the idea of him dropping the bishop back. Okay? But white then makes a very subtle, clever move. Can you see what white would do? Take a look at it for a sec. I didn't see it. I tried for quite a few minutes to look at it. I couldn't see it. A very simple, powerful, effective move. A3. What this does is it shifts the target. Now white has options with the battery. Not only does he put a stop to the bishop coming down in here, although the bishop's not going to, it'll just die, but he shifts the option of the battery. Here, drop the queen to c2, and the battery is up here on h7. Bring the bishop to a2, and the battery is at f7. A different target. A different dynamic. Just one subtle pawn move to a3 means that white can choose his options of target squares, and black's not going to know which one to prepare for, because it will take a different strategy to defend this one than it does this one. You see that? So that subtle little clever move was really a dynamic shot. Hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had to go take a potty break. It's one of those things, you know. It's not my fault. It's biology. So, the a3 push. Really remarkably fascinating stuff coming up right now. So, bishop goes to d6. Setting up a reverse battery with the queen and bishop. He's trying to see his queen is misplaced, so he's attempting to at least make her more useful by getting a battery in here. Although look at the knight f6, look at the guardian here. Yeah, he's got a battery with the bishop and the queen, but the guardian on that h2. It's why black also wants to regroup his pieces and get his knight here for the same reason to guard that h7. The knight on f6 or f3 is exquisitely powerful to guard on the h-file, the squares on the h-file, right? So this is what we're looking at. And now here he comes. Now, all of Black's positioning of his pieces have been so that he can break through the center. He has been preparing for the e4 for the last 5 moves. And this is kind of the elevated chess we need to eventually get to. That's why I'm trying to show you this. We have the 3 pillars that I've kind of sort of, I didn't invent any of it, but I'm calling them the 3 pillars to get beginners and intermediates going. Now we're going beyond that somewhat with the idea of optimal piece placement, and that takes a ton of practice. This is what we're witnessing here. So I just want to give us a flavor for how this can work. D will take the E, and there we go. That's what I was saying. Now the file belongs to white, and he's got a target. Notice how that shifts that. The partial open file is no longer Black's with the target. It is now White's with the target. And White has his rooks connected. Black does not. That makes a difference in this game. White will own the file. And that's critical for the kingside attack that we're about to see. That's something to seriously write down and take note and put it in our heads. The importance of connecting the rooks. These are disconnected and there is less power here than here. And we are about to see that. Really wonderful how this... Now, knight will take the e4 and look at the potential kingside attack for white getting very strong right now. 2 knights pointing toward the kingside, no question. Queen, bishop, coordinated, going to the kingside, no question. Rooks on the files. The center has been opened. White's pawns are not stopping him. Very important. All coordinated. This is fantastic to see this. Rook e7. Now he's going to try to bring his queen up so that he can bring his other rook in. He's really, that's almost a forced move. It doesn't, it doesn't do a lot for, he can't, if you're asking, and this is just my opinion, Yusupov doesn't say this, this is the BYP thinking out loud. Were he to, from this point, were Black to take the knight, and White take it with the bishop, he can't bring his other rook here to contest the file. Right? That's why I don't think Black took the knight. Well, I mean, he's down the exchange also. I mean, that much is obvious. But if he's trying to alleviate the pressure of the kingside attack that he can see coming, taking the knight isn't an option. And if he takes it with the bishop, or the other option is to take it with the rook, either way for white, oh man, that's just powerful. And Black can't counter by fighting for the file. Because of that misplaced queen, because of just that simple little trick, he put his rook across from the queen, and the queen moved because of it. A less strong or a less optimal square than here. We are beginning to see the effects just kind of domino out from that, aren't we? So that's my opinion. To counter, the coordination here is so good. To counter the attack, to try to screw up the coordination, Black is almost forced to lose the exchange. He almost has to take the knight, but he can't. So the best he did was e7. Let's watch. Let's watch. And I wrote a note down here as I was playing through this a few times, getting used to this game. Let's do a quick position check through the Jeremy Silman way of reading the chessboard, and what do you see? The only thing worth seeing I saw immediately because I studied Silman, not as good as I need to, but I have studied him, is simply this. There's just one simple thing as beginners, intermediates, and even grandmasters, masters, everyone needs to see. The people above us in their chess power and ability see this. We need to just at least know what it is. Where is all of Black's power? Look at that king. Don't tell me this position doesn't scream kingside attack. There is nothing here protecting the king. It's all over here. And it's misplaced. It's jumbled. It's tight. It's cramped. It is not coordinated. Kingside attack. When the position tells you to do a kingside attack, go. That's what Silman says. This position says kingside attack. Not only is the king alone, more or less, his pawn structure has induced weaknesses. Kingside attack. That makes sense? So, okay. And white opts to put the bishop up instead of drop the queen down. So instead of its target being the h7, white opts to target f7. Okay? Understand it. Putting the bishop up, there's the hit. The hit man has been given his target. So the queen comes up, and truly there is, that's it. That's the only place you got for the queen. Because Black must get that rook in this game. So his bishop has been hemmed in. The c5 has been prevented, which has hemmed in his bishop. His rook has been hemmed in. His queen has been on a lousy square. That's half his army, you guys. The rook, the queen, the bishop. There's only 3 other pieces here. That's half his army that has been misplaced. Not only can you not coordinate an attack, you cannot coordinate a defense. And so he's got no choice. He just has to do what he has to do. Yeah. White takes complete advantage of this. The beginning of the attack. Knight from E to G5. And you say, what a stupid move. All the pawn has to do is take it. No, that's not a stupid move. That pawn cannot take that knight. No. He's hoping that pawn takes that knight. Because if the pawn takes the knight and the other knight comes up, then the very next move is queen down, and here we go. Hot dang. Yeah, baby. We got this. If he comes up, then the bishop will take out that pawn, the rook will take, and then the queen will take this. Check with the knight right here. There's the mate square. I'm not kidding. This is brutal. Black is in deep, deep, deep trouble here. Now I hope I can put all this back right. Where was this? I bet, oh crap. I bet I can't. Let's see, knight G5, oh, knight from E. Oh crap, hold on, I'll be right back. Holy cow, having the mind of an old fart. It's difficult, more difficult than you think. Okay, so the attack begins. Knight E to, E to G5. Finally, he gets the knight to F6. Finally, that is the optimal square for that knight under attack. Yeah. So, okay, Black has a piece or two. Now, notice the rooks are opposing each other. Yeah. This can get tricky quick. Now, this particular, I want to show you this. Yusupov shows this, and it's really good. Had he, instead of the knight to f6, had he gone rook takes e1 instead, you know, I mentioned the importance of arguing for the files and taking them away, right? So let's say that black went ahead and took the rook, and now the rook takes the rook, and h takes the knight now, and then the queen takes f7. And here's the problem. King goes here, queen h5 mate. Yeah, that's how tight this thing is. So see how black, because of the lesser position power that he's had, he is helpless to take the file away from white because there's a checkmate involved. That's important to see. Hang on, I'll be right back. I'll reset the board up. This is great, isn't it? All right, so that's why he can't take the file, and that knight is immune from being taken. So what do you do then? What do you do at this point? You go to knight f6. That's the next best move, right? And now from here, now, because of the excellence of his position, all of his pieces are placed on their optimal squares for a kingside attack, and his pieces are better coordinated, working together as an entire unit. It is white who can attack on the file. That's critical to see, you guys. That's a huge difference, isn't it? Now, black responds with the queen taking the rook, and this puts the queen in a bad spot, because now white goes f7 check. Look at the power move. Not only is he coordinated with his bishop, he's coordinated with his knights. And if that knight gets taken, this knight simply jumps up and takes its place. Black is in deep trouble here. Is that a phenomenal position or what? That is so glorious to see that, man. Oh, and I've got a... What Yusupov says here at this point, he says, black is losing at least 2 pawns here. And what I did is I tinkered with it. Let me show you one real quick one. If at this point, if the queen does take the queen, and there's a number of variations you can do. I said, hey, what if the bishop takes the queen check, and the king comes to f8, and now bishop comes to g6, blocking the pawns in, making it so the king has a tough time escaping. And if black's not real careful now, he can really get in trouble. He can't come to here because the bishop covers that square. To stop the knight from e6 check, he can't do that. So what can he do, you know? He can come here, right? That doesn't do a lot for him, though, because then you bring the rook in on the file again. That file, that ever-powerful file. So, I mean, this is a tough situation for black. He's in trouble. That's one possibility. Hang on, I'll be right back. I'll put it back to the original spot. And I'll show you another one that Yusupov showed. Really a beauty. Oh, the variations in this are stunning because white is so coordinated. That's the point, right? So from this point, what black did was he went to king h8. I mean, really, truly, there's nothing else he can do. Now, here's the shtick on this. White now went knight to e5. And I know, Juzerneem, you're going to love this position, aren't you? Phoenix, you're going to love this. Odoker, you're going to love these positions. Junie, you're going to love looking at these and the variations. There's a lot of different, really great variations. I want to show you a couple. One is one, well, there's a couple that I've come up with, and then I want to show you one that Yusupov found. A lot of good stuff in this position. Needless to say, black is completely lost. He's going to lose pieces like crazy here. And let me back up one. I'm going to put the king here. And here is Yusupov's idea. If the queen takes the queen, and I came up with another variation of my own. Look at those glorious knights tackling that queen, right? And then knight takes f7. I don't know which knight, though. Oh, no, this was before knight went to... This was before knight went to e5, so it's going to be this knight. Okay, sorry, this was the position. So the queen takes the queen, then the knight takes the queen, and now bishop comes to c7 because the knight's hitting the bishop, so the bishop moves out of harm, but now you have a discovered check with knight going to d8 because remember, the bishop on a2 is checking the king. Is that wild or what, man? That is so cool. So now the king has to go to h7. And then from this point, knight takes b7. And black is just wiped out. And then, oh, he keeps going. And then rook comes to b8. Let's see how far this goes through. Yeah, and then rook c1. Yeah. Holy cow, because if then he takes the knight here, right, then the idea is rook takes the pawn, and it's just curtains, man. That's brutal, isn't it? That's one of Yusupov's variations. Hang on, I'll reset it back up, and I'll show you another one I found. Really fun stuff. All right, let me show you one of my evaluations. This is after knight goes to e5. Now let's say instead that black did not resign. Here he did, but let's say he didn't. Let's assume, this is one of my variations. Let's say, okay, I'm going to have to take your queen, yes, right? Queen takes queen. Knight at e takes f7, check, right? And king comes back to g8. Because he can't come to h7 because you've got the knight hitting h7. Right? Yeah, it's protected, but not yet. So he's forced back to g. And now knight takes d6, discovered check from that beautiful bishop on a2. You can see the difficulty black's in. I mean, it's no wonder he resigned, right? So he goes back to h8, and knight g to f7 check. Then king h7, finally, and then knight takes b7. And black is just completely wiped out. That's one possible variation. In the course of studying the grandmasters, Yusupov, Bobby Fischer's chess games, we've gone through some Alexander Alekhine games. We're looking through some tactics to try to get tactics ideas out. Now we're beginning to see the importance of worrying about our position and putting our pieces on optimal squares. That is really important. So that, and what makes an optimal square? Not only making the piece more powerful, but also putting it on a square that it can coordinate with another piece and another piece and another piece. That's optimization of the position. So these are some examples of this. I will show others at a later time. I want to get back to the Bobby Fischer chess games. We are just getting to the point to where he's getting really good, and there's some exciting stuff coming up. So anyway, thanks for watching my Backyard Professor chess videos. Remember, drink lots of milk. Oh, wait a minute. No, not milk. Water, water, that's it. Yeah, baby. Water. The doctor says if you're not peeing once an hour, every hour, you're not drinking enough water. That's how much water we should be drinking. And I'm saying that for my sake, because I'm not drinking enough water yet. So anyway, be good, do well, have fun. Thanks. Be friends to everyone. Be friends to everyone. The world is a tough place. Leave the world better than when we found it. Daenerys Targaryen, the queen in the Game of Thrones, the mother of dragons. We are going to leave the world a better place than the way we found it. I love that philosophy. That's great. I'll adopt it. I just wish I had a dragon to fly on. Hey, I've got a Sicilian dragon, though, that I can play, right? Yeah, whatever. Okay, thanks, you guys. I will see you in the next Backyard Professor Chess video.